The giant alien ship appeared in Earth's sky like a nightmare made real. It was bigger than any city, its dark metal surface covered in battle scars from destroying hundreds of other worlds. Inside the massive vessel, Admiral Vexthan looked down at the small blue planet through the bridge windows. His 4 yellow eyes showed no emotion as he studied what he thought would be another easy conquest. The alien commander was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His species had been conquering planets for over 1,000 years. To him, Earth was just another number on a very long list. "Send them our message," Vexthan told his crew in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Back on Earth, President." Kim sat in the emergency meeting room deep underground in Seoul. Around the table were leaders from every major country, all staring at the holographic image that had just appeared in front of them. The alien's face was scary, but his words were even worse. "People of Earth," the alien said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "I am Admiral Vexthan of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet has been chosen to join our empire. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities and take your world by force. This is your only warning." The hologram disappeared, leaving the room in complete silence. President Kim felt his heart pounding. He looked at the faces around the table and saw the same fear he felt inside. General Park was the first to speak. His face was red with anger as he stood up and hit the table with his fist. "Our best nuclear missiles are like toys compared to their weapons. We have fighter jets, they have ships that can destroy entire continents. How are we supposed to fight something like that?" The other military leaders nodded sadly. They had spent their whole careers preparing for wars against other humans, not aliens with technology that seemed like magic. But while everyone else was panicking, Dr. Lee was working. She sat at her computer in the Seoul Space Center, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she studied the readings from the alien ship. She had been one of Korea's best quantum physicists before becoming Earth's top expert on space technology. The numbers on her screen told an incredible story. The alien ship was powerful, but it wasn't perfect. Hidden in the energy patterns she was seeing, there was something interesting, something that might be useful. Dr. Lee had always been curious about everything. As a child, she took apart every electronic device she could find just to see how it worked. Now, looking at the alien technology, she felt that same curiosity mixed with desperate hope. She noticed that the alien ship's shields worked differently than human scientists had expected. Most science fiction movies showed energy shields as perfect barriers, but these shields had a rhythm, like a heartbeat. They got stronger and weaker in a pattern that repeated every few seconds. More importantly, the ship's weapons and shields used the same energy source. When they fired their big guns, their protective barriers got temporarily weaker. It was like a person who couldn't breathe in and breathe out at exactly the same time. Dr. Lee's hands were shaking as she made more calculations. If she was right, there might be a tiny window of opportunity, a moment when the alien ship would be vulnerable. It would be incredibly dangerous and probably impossible, but it was something. She grabbed her phone and called President Kim directly. "Sir, I need to speak with you right now. I think I found something important about their ship." "President," Kim answered immediately. His voice sounded tired and scared. "Dr. Lee, please tell me you have good news. The whole world is counting on us." "Mr. President," Dr. Lee said, trying to keep her voice steady, "their technology isn't as perfect as they want us to think. I've been studying their ship's energy patterns, and I found a weakness. It's small and it would be extremely risky to try to use it, but we might have a chance to fight back." For the first time since the aliens arrived, President Kim felt a small spark of hope. "Tell me everything." As Dr. Lee explained her discovery, neither of them knew that their conversation would change the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The television cameras were rolling as President Kim walked to the podium. Outside, 50 alien warships now filled Earth's sky like dark clouds, promising a terrible storm. Every person on the planet was watching, waiting to hear if their leader would surrender their world to save their lives. President Kim looked directly into the camera. His hands weren't shaking, even though he knew this moment would decide the fate of every human being alive. Behind him stood the flags of every nation on Earth, united for perhaps the first time in history, people of Earth, and you who watch. From the stars, President Kim began, his voice carrying across every television, radio, and internet stream on the planet. The Zephyrian Empire has demanded our surrender. They want us to bow down and accept slavery. They believe we will give up our freedom to save our lives. He paused, letting his words sink in across the globe and beyond. To Admiral Vexthun and the Zephyrian Empire, humanity gives you this answer. No, we will not surrender. We will not bow. We will not become your slaves. If you want our world, you'll have to take it from our dead hands. Up in orbit, Admiral Vexthun watched the broadcast in his command center. His four eyes widened with surprise, and his jaw parts clicked together nervously. In over 300 years of conquest, no species had ever said no after seeing the Empire's fleet. They always begged for mercy. They always surrendered. Impossible, he muttered to his officers. They must not understand. Show them what happens to those who refuse us. The alien admiral gave his orders, and 3 of his smaller ships moved toward Earth's old space stations. These stations had been abandoned years ago when newer ones were built, but they were still visible from Earth's surface. The alien weapons fired, and the space stations exploded in bright flashes that lit up the night sky. The message was clear. This is what happens when you say no to the Empire. But something strange happened next. Instead of panic and riots in the streets, Earth became incredibly organized. It was like watching a sleeping giant wake up and prepare for battle. Commander Choi had been expecting this moment. As soon as President Kim's speech ended, she activated emergency plans that had been prepared in secret. Across every major city on Earth, sirens began wailing, but they weren't panic sirens. They were evacuation sirens. In Seoul, millions of people calmly walked to subway stations and underground parking garages. In Tokyo, families carried emergency bags into deep tunnels that had been prepared weeks ago. In New York, London, and every other major city, humans disappeared underground like ants returning to their hill. The aliens watching from space were confused. Other species usually ran around screaming when they destroyed their space stations. These humans were moving with purpose, like they had been planning for this exact moment. Engineer Han was working 18 hours a day in a secret facility under the mountains near Busan. Dr. Lee's discovery about the alien shield weakness had given him an idea that was either brilliant or completely crazy. He was taking ordinary cargo ships, the kind that carried containers across the ocean, and turning them into weapons. The work was dangerous and exhausting. Han's team was installing experimental energy weapons that had never been tested in real combat. They were also adding armor plating and shield generators that they had built by copying pieces of alien technology from old UFO crashes that governments had kept secret for decades. "Will these ships actually work?" asked one of Han's assistants, looking worried as they welded another piece of alien metal to a cargo ship's hull. "I honestly don't know," Han replied, wiping sweat from his face. "But Dr. Lee says if we can hit their ships at exactly the right moment, when their shields cycle down, we might be able to hurt them. It's better than doing nothing." Meanwhile, all across Asia and the rest of the world, ordinary people were doing extraordinary things. Captain Song, who used to be a subway train driver in Seoul, was now leading teams of volunteers who were turning underground tunnels into defensive positions. They installed hidden weapons, created secret passages between buildings, and set up communication networks that the aliens couldn't detect. Teacher Min had quit her job at the elementary school and was now doing something she never imagined. She was broadcasting secret radio messages to planets that the aliens had already conquered, planets where millions of enslaved people had given up hope. "People of the galaxy," she whispered into her hidden radio transmitter. "Earth stands strong. We have not surrendered. We are preparing to fight. Don't give up hope. Help is coming." These messages traveled across space to worlds where alien slaves worked in mines and factories. For the first time in years, some of them began to believe that freedom might be possible. Admiral Vexthun watched all this human activity through his ship's sensors, and for the first time in his long military career, he felt worried. Every other species he had conquered spent their last free days crying and begging for mercy. These humans were sharpening their knives and getting ready for war. "Sir," one of his officers reported, The humans are not behaving normally. They should be panicking, but instead they're organizing. It's like they want us to attack them. Vexthan stared down at the blue planet, beginning to realize he might have made a terrible mistake. The attack came with the sunrise. Admiral Vexthan had chosen dawn because he believed it would catch the humans sleeping and unprepared. His massive warships positioned themselves over Seoul, Tokyo, and New York, ready to demonstrate the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. Begin. Bombardment, Vexthan commanded, expecting to see millions of humans running in terror through the streets. The energy beams struck the cities like lightning from the gods. Buildings that had stood for decades crumbled into dust. Roads melted into glass. The aliens had done this exact same attack on hundreds of other worlds, and it always worked the same way. First came the destruction, then came the screaming, and finally came the surrender. But something was wrong. The alien sensors showed destroyed buildings and burning streets, but there were no people, no crowds running in panic, no bodies in the rubble. The cities were empty, like everyone had simply disappeared. "Where are they?" asked Vexthan, staring at the empty streets through his ship's cameras. On every other world, the first attack would kill millions and terrify the survivors into giving up. But Earth's cities looked like ghost towns. The answer came quickly. As the alien dropships descended through the smoke and landed in downtown Seoul, they found out exactly where the humans had gone. Sergeant Kang crouched in the subway tunnel, beneath the street, watching through a small periscope as the alien soldiers stepped out of their landing craft. He had been a regular soldier in the Korean army just 2 weeks ago. Now he was leading a squad of volunteers armed with weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. "Wait for my signal," Kang whispered into his radio to the other teams hidden throughout the city. "Let them get comfortable first." The Zephyrian soldiers were tall and thin, wearing armor that looked like it could stop any human weapon. They moved carefully through the empty streets, their strange rifles ready to fire. They had done this invasion routine so many times that it was almost boring to them. That's when the humans struck. Private Yoon emerged from a manhole cover behind a group of alien soldiers. In his hands was a device that no human military had possessed a month ago, a plasma charge built from alien technology that Dr. Lee's team had reverse-engineered from crashed UFO parts. "For Earth!" Yoon shouted as he activated the device. The explosion was incredible. The plasma charge didn't just explode like a regular bomb, it created a ball of energy that vaporized everything within 50 feet. Yoon knew he wouldn't survive the blast, but he also knew that his sacrifice would take down an entire squad of enemies. All across Seoul, similar attacks were happening at the same time. Humans appeared from sewers, rooftops, and hidden tunnels. They weren't using regular guns or missiles that would bounce off alien armor. Instead, they carried weapons that the aliens recognized with growing fear, their own technology, modified and improved by human engineers. "They're everywhere!" screamed a Zephyrian soldier into his communication device as laser beams fired at him from 3 different directions. "How do they have our weapons?" The alien soldiers had trained to fight. Other aliens who would meet them in open battle with predictable tactics. But humans fought differently. They appeared from underground, fired their stolen weapons, and then disappeared back into tunnels before the aliens could fight back. Captain Jung's resistance cell had set up their base in an abandoned shopping mall. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, turning the building into a maze of traps and hidden passages. When a group of alien soldiers entered the mall, they found themselves surrounded by humans who seemed to know every corner and hiding spot. The battle was short but decisive. Jung's team used nets made from alien materials to trap the soldiers, then stunned them with modified alien stun weapons. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had captured alien prisoners alive. "Get them to the safe house immediately," Jung ordered his team. "Dr. Lee needs to study their equipment." Within hours, the captured alien weapons and armor were in Dr. Lee's underground laboratory. She worked through the night with her team of engineers, taking apart every piece of alien technology they could find. What they discovered changed everything. "The aliens make everything too complicated," Dr. Lee explained to President Kim over a secure video call. "Their weapons are powerful, but they have too many safety systems and backup protocols. We can strip out all the unnecessary parts and make them simpler and more effective. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Lee figured out how the alien shields worked. She had been right about the weakness she discovered earlier, but now she understood something even more important. Their shields and weapons use the same energy frequency, she told her team excitedly. If we modify their own plasma rifles to fire at exactly the right frequency, we can turn their weapons into shield breakers. We can use their technology against them. By midnight, Dr. Lee's team had created the first human-built shield-penetrating weapons. They weren't just copying alien technology anymore, they were improving it. Admiral Vexthun sat in his command center, reading battle reports that made no sense. His ground forces weren't winning. They weren't even holding their positions. The humans were fighting like nothing he had ever seen before. Other species would retreat when they were outnumbered. Humans charged forward. Other species would surrender when they were wounded. Humans would set off explosives, taking as many aliens with them as possible. Other species would hide and hope to survive. Humans turned their entire cities into weapons. "Sir," reported one of his officers, "we've lost contact with 3 landing parties. The humans aren't just fighting back, they're winning." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Vexthun began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had finally found an enemy they couldn't defeat. Colonel Seo had been waiting on the moon for 3 weeks, watching Earth burn from alien attacks while preparing for this moment. The lunar base had been secretly expanded over the past month, hidden from alien sensors by being built inside old mining tunnels. Now it was time to show the aliens that humans could fight in space too. "All ships, this is Colonel Seo," she announced, over the radio to her unusual fleet. "Today we take the fight to them. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them pay for every inch of our solar system." Her fleet wasn't made of military warships. The aliens had destroyed Earth's small space navy in the first hour of their attack. Instead, Seo commanded mining ships, cargo haulers, and passenger shuttles that had been hastily converted into weapons of war. The biggest ship in her fleet was called the Soul's Vengeance. It had been a mining vessel designed to cut through asteroids, but Engineer Han's team had transformed it into something much more dangerous. Captain Ryu stood on its bridge, looking at the alien fleet that still surrounded Earth like a pack of wolves. "Captain," reported his engineer, "the fusion charges are armed. Once we start this run, there's no turning back." Captain Ryu nodded. He had volunteered for this mission knowing exactly what it meant. The Soul's Vengeance wasn't built to survive combat with alien warships. It was built to hurt them as much as possible before dying. "All crew prepare for attack run," Ryu announced over the ship's speakers. "Set course for the alien cruiser, maximum speed." The mining ship accelerated toward the Zephyrian cruiser like a missile. Its hull had been packed with fusion charges, the same type of explosives used to break apart asteroids, but much more powerful. The alien ship's captain saw the human vessel approaching and wasn't worried. One mining ship against a military cruiser should be an easy fight. The alien ship fired its energy weapons, hitting the Soul's Vengeance again and again. Parts of the human ship exploded and burned, but it kept coming. The alien captain ordered his shields to maximum power, confident they would stop whatever the humans were planning. That's when Dr. Lee's discovery proved its worth. The human ship's weapons had been modified to fire at exactly the right frequency, to disrupt alien shields. As the Soul's Vengeance got closer, its mining lasers tore through the alien cruiser's protective barrier like it was made of paper. "Shields are down," Captain Ryu shouted to his crew. "Ramming speed." The mining ship crashed into the alien cruiser's hull, and both ships exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that could be seen from Earth. Captain Ryu's last words, "For Earth," echoed across every human radio frequency in the solar system. "Admiral." Vexthun watched the explosion from his flagship, unable to believe what he had just seen. The human ship had been smaller, weaker, and completely outgunned. Any rational species would have retreated. Instead, the humans had turned their ship into a bomb and used it to destroy one of his cruisers. "Sir," reported one of his officers, "we're detecting more human ships approaching from multiple directions." What Vexthun saw on his screens terrified him. Dozens of human vessels were heading toward his fleet, and none of them were trying to avoid combat. Cargo ships that should have been running away were flying straight at his warships. Passenger shuttles were attacking his destroyers. Mining vessels were ramming his cruisers. Engineer Han's fire ships were the most frightening of all. These were volunteers who had loaded their ships with antimatter warheads and were piloting them personally toward alien targets. They didn't expect to survive. They only expected to take aliens with them when they died. The battle became unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships would charge directly at alien vessels, ignoring their own safety completely. When their weapons failed, they would ram. When their engines were destroyed, they would detonate their own ships rather than be captured. Lieutenant Bay led a squadron of small fighter craft toward Vexithan's flagship. Her ships were tiny compared to the massive alien dreadnought, like wasps attacking a giant. The alien point defense weapons shot down most of her squadron, but a few ships made it through. "This is Lieutenant Bay to all Earth forces," she radioed as her damaged fighter approached the alien flagship. "The big ship's shields are weakening. I'm going in." Her fighter and two others dove straight into the alien ship's hangar bay. The explosions weren't big enough to destroy the flagship, but they caused fires and system failures throughout the massive vessel. Admiral Vexthan felt his ship shake from the internal explosions. Emergency alarms were ringing everywhere. His officers were reporting damage on dozens of decks. "Sir, the humans are using suicide tactics," reported his tactical officer. "They're not trying to win battles. They're trying to trade their lives for as much damage as possible." That's when Vexthan understood the horrible truth. Every other species the Empire had conquered wanted to survive. They would fight until they realized they couldn't win. Then they would surrender to save their lives. But humans were different. They fought like they didn't care about dying as long as they could hurt their enemies. "They're not fighting to win," Vexthan said quietly, watching another human ship explode against one of his cruisers. "They're fighting to kill us all, even if it means they die too." The alien admiral had conquered hundreds of worlds, but he had never faced an enemy that turned every ship into a weapon and every crew into a suicide squad. The humans were smaller and weaker, but they were absolutely relentless. They never retreated, never surrendered, and never stopped attacking. As he watched his fleet take damage from human ships that shouldn't have been able to hurt them, Admiral Vexithan began to realize that the Zephyrian Empire might have finally found an enemy they couldn't defeat, not because the humans were stronger, but because they were willing to sacrifice everything to destroy their conquerors. The fire of human determination was burning across the solar system, and it was about to spread to the rest of the galaxy. What started as just another easy conquest for the Zephyrian Empire had become their worst nightmare. The news of Earth's resistance spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. On planets that had been conquered decades ago, enslaved populations who had given up all hope suddenly heard something impossible. Humans were fighting back and winning. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, alien slaves worked in deep underground tunnels, digging precious metals for their Zephyrian masters. They had been slaves for so long that most had forgotten what freedom felt like. But late one night, hidden radios picked up a transmission that changed everything. Captain Moon's voice crackled through the static. "People of the galaxy, this is Captain Moon broadcasting from the Human Resistance Fleet. Earth has not fallen. We are fighting and we are winning. The Empire can be beaten. Rise up. Earth shows the way." The message was short, but it spread like wildfire through the slave quarters. Within days, similar messages were being heard on conquered worlds throughout the galaxy. The slaves began to whisper to each other about the impossible. Maybe freedom was actually possible. The rebellion started small. On one planet, slaves sabotaged mining equipment. On another, they refused to work in the factories. But as more news came from Earth about human victories, the resistance grew bolder. Then the liberation fleets arrived. These weren't ordinary military ships coming to rescue the enslaved worlds. They were human fire ships, vessels packed with volunteers and explosives, piloted by crews who had turned themselves into living weapons. Each ship was small compared to Empire warships, but they didn't need to be big. They just needed to cause enough damage to give the local populations a chance to fight back. The first Liberation Fleet appeared at Kepler 442b without warning. The human ships ignored the orbiting Empire garrison and headed straight for the slave barracks. They didn't land to fight, Instead, they dropped weapons, supplies, and most importantly, instructions on how to build more weapons from mining. Equipment. "This is Commander Chen of the Earth Liberation Fleet," came the broadcast to the planet's surface. "We can't stay to fight your battle for you, but we can give you the tools. The choice is yours. Remain slaves or die fighting for freedom." The choice was easy. Within hours, the mining world was in full revolt. The enslaved populations used their mining lasers and explosives to attack their Zephyrian guards. Most of the rebels died in the fighting, but they took their oppressors with them. More importantly, they inspired other worlds to try the same thing. Admiral Vexthan received reports of rebellions breaking out across dozens of star systems. His empire, which had seemed invincible just months ago, was falling apart. The humans weren't just defending their own world anymore, they were actively destroying his entire civilization. The worst part was how they fought. Other species would try to minimize casualties and preserve their own lives. Humans acted like every single one of them was a weapon that could be sacrificed to cause maximum damage to the Empire. Their fireships appeared in Empire space like deadly ghosts, striking at military bases, supply lines, and government centers before exploding in nuclear fire. Vexithan's flagship was burning around him as he sent his final message to the Empire's capital world. Emergency lights flickered in the smoke-filled command center. Half his crew was dead, and the other half was trying to fight fires and seal hull breaches. "Imperial Command, this is Admiral Vexthan." He spoke into his communications system, knowing it would probably be his last transmission. "Evacuate the outer colonies immediately. The humans are not interested in conquest or negotiation. They are coming to destroy us completely, and they don't take prisoners, they take entire planets." He paused as another explosion shook his dying ship. "They fight like demons. Every human ship is a suicide weapon. Every human soldier would rather die than retreat. We cannot defeat an enemy that doesn't fear death. Save what you can of the Empire, because the humans are coming for all of us." The transmission ended as Vexthan's flagship exploded, taking the Admiral and his crew into the void of space. But by then, it was already too late for the Zephyrian Empire. Commander Park's Liberation Task Force had reached the Empire's core worlds, expecting to find heavily defended planets that would require massive battles to liberate. Instead, they found the planets already in revolt. The enslaved populations had heard about Earth's resistance and had risen up on their own. The Empire's 1,000-year reign was collapsing from within, as species that had been conquered generations ago remembered what it meant to be free. On the Empire's capital world, government buildings burned as former slaves hunted down their oppressors. The mighty Zephyrian military, which had conquered 847 worlds, was defeated not by superior technology, but by the simple idea that freedom was worth dying for. President Kim made one final broadcast that was heard across the entire galaxy. He stood in the rebuilt UN building in Seoul, surrounded by representatives from dozens of liberated worlds. "To all beings who suffer under tyranny, wherever you may be," President Kim said, his voice carrying to every corner of known space. "Earth remembers your pain. We have not forgotten that freedom is the right of every living creature. The age of empires is over. The age of freedom has begun." The broadcast continued. "We are coming for you, not as conquerors, but as liberators, not to rule over you, but to stand beside you. The galaxy belongs to all of us, not to those who would chain us." The Zephyrian Empire's 1,000-year reign ended not with a peace treaty or surrender ceremony, but with fire. The fire of human determination had spread across the stars, teaching the galaxy a truth that tyrants everywhere would learn to fear. Some species cannot be conquered, only temporarily contained, and once that fire of freedom is lit, it burns, until every chain is broken and every slave set free. The Empire was dead, but the galaxy was finally alive.